Very good turnout tonight. Thank you for turning up. We've hopefully turned a corner with COVID and the rollout of the vaccines really helping for us to be a healthier society. So can't wait till we're seeing the back of this thing, that's for sure. The normal introduction. Please, for anyone who hasn't signed in, just remember that it is a requirement that we do sign in, so check over there once the meeting's done, or now if you like, that's all good. For those of you that haven't been here before, the toilets are down the hallway, and we do practice social distancing, and we are live streaming and video recording this. And eventually Les will skip through the slides. Keep going, mate, I've done all this. Excellent, next one. All right. So we've got quite a few speakers tonight. Are all the speakers here? Because I didn't actually get Is Tim here? Hello, Tim. Hannah's here, Mark's here, Cal's here, Peter's here. Excellent. One of our speakers did decide to move to May, so that's no dramas. We've got plenty of stuff to talk about tonight. All right, so let's get stuck into it. Events and planning. So there have been a few events very recently. I did the April EV catch-up down at the Gold Coast. Not as well attended as the previous ones. There were a few cars that were there that aren't in this photo, but unfortunately it took forever to drive there, 2 hours 40 from my place, which is only normally an hour and 20-minute drive. So the family was a bit restless, but never mind. I'm happy to organise these things, and whoever comes along for a chat, we'll just spread the word. Because in these type of settings, we don't get to spend as much time with the cars as I would like. So for anyone who wants to bring their EV along, the next one in May is just at Toombul here. So a local one, don't have to worry about driving to the Gold Coast. So the next one after that will be at Sunshine Coast. So Simone, Graham, Les and I, who else was there from the committee? Yes? A lot of the regulars went up to Gympie last weekend, and this is just a shot of the EVs on display. I think there's another one, Les. So it wasn't the largest event, and here's our display. Sorry, I just unbuckled myself. Yeah, it's not time for that. It was a nice sort of boutique type of environmental thing. It wasn't EV only focus, just a few other bits and pieces, but it's quite a long drive. Only had a few people come up, but once again, getting out there and doing stuff. And when we do events, it would be helpful, seeing as how many people are here, if we could just get 1 or 2 extra people to lend us a hand throughout the day, because being at these events, I mean, personally, I don't mind. I commit my time, but I mean, it is nice just to get the chance to walk around the event itself, and not just to be there when you're doing, promotion, to go to these type of events and never actually getting to see the stalls and that sort of thing. So with the stuff that we do in the events, sometimes we will have a stall and sometimes we will just attend with cars and that type of thing. I think that's probably the best way to do it. And I'll let you know if we need a hand in advance, and maybe we can get a couple of people to help out. Behave yourself back there. All right. So, as I mentioned, the next meeting is at Toombul. Who here is interested in coming to the Toombul meet? Anyone? Okay. Probably if it's good weather up the top, and if it's rainy, we can go underneath. You have a question already? No? Okay. There's the Logan Eco Action Festival, known as LEAF, on the 23rd of May. There's we got an invite for the EV track day. Yes, Simone?
Sorry. The 1st of May is the one that Ipswich. I just need 2 cars. I've already got one committed, just so you know.
Yes. Anyone with an EV doesn't mind on the 1st of May? 7th? No, 1st of May. Is that Sunday? So is that Saturday? Okay, Saturday the 1st of May. If anyone's interested, can you let Simone know? We just need one other. I think Gary's going with his Tesla. We just need one other EV. That shouldn't be too difficult. Do you know who invited about the track day? The Tesla guys have done this before from the pictures, and it's just down the highway a bit on the south side at the Norwell Motor Complex. It's about 350 to enter, and it's quite a day of events and letting loose with your EV on the track, and skid pan, and driver training, and lunch and refreshments and that type of thing. So EVs, yeah.
So you won't have the chance to offset any petrol?
I don't believe so. EV track day, yeah. So it's not our event, but I'm just letting you know that there is something on if you're interested in that type of thing.
It was actually a lady from the actual track.
Yes.
Contacted us, and she'll have somebody there to train you how to, basically manoeuvre your car,
Yes.
do wet and so forth. So that
Yeah.
it's not just a fun day; it's a bit of training as well.
Yes, yes. Like drive full pelt and then slam your brakes on with regen. All right. And moving further into June, we've got the Sunshine Coast EV EV meetup. The RACQ Motorfest will be on at the Brisbane Showgrounds, which isn't where it was in 2019. I think it was at the Doomben Racecourse, so it's not the same place. And the ACF are wanting to have an EV day at Holland Park in June, so we'll talk more about that closer to the time. We're moving on to infrastructure, as I normally do. Les doesn't know I put this photo in. The friendly giant. All right, so this is because we did the EV, we took our cars up to the Gympie Envirotech. So this is just at the local one. And Les is claiming credit for this design. That's his design. So I don't mind it. It allows charging from any angle, because I have seen many different inventive ways to use the charger when it's not actually positioned correctly. So good one, Les. All right, Paul, that's with us tonight, he looks after Smart Charge, and this is the one at Noosa Blue. And this was existing, and it had a Type 1 DC fast charger cable on there. So the J1772 with the 2 ports underneath. And it wasn't seeing much action for a very long time, and I think it was throwing some errors, but after the Gympie event, we went there and tested it with the new cable and did a little bit of troubleshooting, and it was working fine. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's actually working there in that photo. So the Smart Charge guys are going to be offering their charging facility at 20 cents per kilowatt hour, which is very competitive. And you can download the app, which I had already done, and I registered tonight. It was quite easy, and you can also order a RFID card, or a little key tag thing if that's your thing. All right, thank you, Les. There hasn't been a massive amount of change in the infrastructure stuff across Queensland, but at the Gold Coast, they're still rolling out the 75 kilowatt chargers, and they've put in the one at Coolangatta. The Curra one was already existing, but now they've also put the Gold Coast City Council chambers and the Carrara indoor sports stadium there. And they have announced that they're doing one at Nerang and Pimpamar. So that's a ton of charges, really. I mean, and I left one off just in case it was a mistake, but they said there was going to be one at Southport, which is like basically there, and one at wherever the chambers are. I forget the suburb name, but I mean, I don't know if you need to have them that close, but they're 75. They're single stall 75 kilowatt tritium that have CCS2 and CharterMo, and they potentially, the technology will be there that 2 cars can charge at the same time. It's not released yet, and but they've got 3 25 kilowatt modules inside them, so one car would be charging at 50 and one would be at 25 if there are 2 cars charging. I have it reliably from Les. Thank you, mate. Oh, they were 30 cents a kilowatt hour, by the way. All right, so that's enough out of me. Straight into the speakers. I didn't update this one for Mark, but Tim, if you would like to come up and tell us about your stuff from Quipmo and Fleeter. Fleeter.
Yeah, Fleeter.
All right, just talking straight into there, mate.
Okay.
And probably just about there.
Good here. Hi guys, my name's Tim. I'm not going to talk about Quipmo tonight. I'll just go through Fleeter a bit. So we're a fleet analytics company. So what we do is we grab data sets. You know, lots of fleets will have telematics, they'll have fuel cards, they'll have workshop data. They have all kinds of things, and it doesn't talk to each other. They're all separate companies or separate data sets. We push it together and create dashboards for our clients. So this might be councils or private fleets or whatnot. We sort of started in energy, so we did energy analysis. The guy that came with me, Brody, he made a product that's in 65 of the 77 councils in Queensland, so we're okay on that side. But what our clients are looking for in fleets is they want a calculator to sort of see when they can change over to EV. It's kind of a big thing in councils. It's a big thing politically, but they want to make sure they make the right decisions, and obviously with that comes infrastructure and things like that as well. So what I'm here today to ask for is, it's been very difficult for us to find EV data. So, you know, what vehicles are using, you know, how to get APIs into Tesla and stuff has been very difficult for us. So we thought we'd go grassroots. I was lucky enough to meet Simone up at Noosa a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, yeah. And we had a bit of a chat, and we thought we'd offer you guys, if you were willing to give us data on your vehicles, we'd create a dashboard for free for the association. So that could be for advocacy, or it could be for like benchmarking against each other, competing against each other, things like that. So that's all I'm here today, really, to sort of promote. Or, you know, if you want to ask more questions after, just come and see me and Brody. We can go through, like, if there's any privacy issues you might have concerns with, or, you know, what a dashboard would look like, or what kind of data we're seeking. Just come and ask us, and we'll go through things, okay? Cool.
All right, thank you for that. Next, we have Hannah from Solar Citizens, who's into electric cars and renewables. Sounds like an excellent, sounds like my YouTube channel, almost. So, here you go.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Do I have to do anything special here or just
No,
hold it?
just talk into that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for having me, and thank you, Jan, for inviting me along. I know it's a pretty packed schedule tonight, so I'll try and keep it pretty brief. But really, I just wanted to come along and tell you all a little bit about Solar Citizens and what we're doing around electric vehicles. So essentially, we're an independent, non-partisan, community-based organisation. We started as a grassroots advocacy group promoting the best outcomes for rooftop solar, and we run people-powered campaigns to try and get the best outcomes for clean energy and for solar owners. And recently, we've expanded our scope into transport. So ultimately, our vision is to decarbonise our energy system and decarbonise our transport system. Next slide. So what do electric vehicles have to do with Solar Citizens? So I'm sure everyone in this room is aware that transport emissions are rising rapidly and that electric vehicles are a really key part of the solution to cleaning up our transport system. So just like we want all Australians to be able to access clean energy, we want all Australians to have access to clean transport. And we think there's a lot of parallels as well between the work we do on rooftop solar and the work we're now doing on electric vehicles. A lot of the same people who have solar, who want solar, are the same people who have EVs or want EVs. And in both cases, there's really been a lack of government policy to support the emerging industry. So I'm sure as well everyone in the room knows I'm preaching to the choir, but people want electric vehicles, but for the most part, they're not buying them. So I've seen research that shows around 50% of Australians want to buy an EV in the next couple of years, but last year EVs made up less than 1% of car sales. So I'm sure you'll know there's a bunch of reasons why that's the case. People have anxiety around the range, they're not sure about charging stations, but our understanding seems to be that the biggest barrier for a lot of people stems around cost, and there just not being enough affordable models in the country for people to buy. So we've seen in other countries where EV sales are really taking off, it's happening because the countries are introducing financial incentives. So you can see in countries like Canada, Germany, France, the US, there's pretty significant financial incentives taking off thousands or up to $10,000 off the upfront costs of electric vehicles through cashback schemes and upfront subsidies and tax breaks, etc. So even within the last year, because of those subsidies, we've seen a pretty massive increase in the EV market share in other countries, but we're not seeing that at all in Australia. It's really stagnating, and as you can see, that really comes down to a lack of financial incentives. So from our perspective, we don't think there's enough state and federal policies to make EVs more affordable. And now we're seeing that car makers are actually holding off on bringing their more affordable, best-selling models to the Australian market because they perceive it as being really hostile compared to overseas. And now, one of the biggest issues that we're focused on is the fact that several states are now considering introducing road user charges. So Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia are all considering it. Victoria are the most far along. They're actually aiming to roll out their road user charges, which we're calling the EV tax, by July 1st, which looks like a 2.5 cent per kilometre charge for EVs and a 2 cent per kilometre for hybrids. And that's on top of the fuel excise that they're going to be paying as well. Thanks. So it's a pretty controversial idea, road user charges. Our biggest concern around them is just the fact that they're premature. So we think that they need to wait until the industry has matured and that the costs for electric vehicles have gone down before they introduce them. EVs are already too expensive for many Australians, and we think that the EV tax, introducing it now, is just going to discourage more people and add more costs onto the EVs. There's only 20,000 electric vehicle drivers in the whole country, so at this stage that's not really having any meaningful impact on what they're missing out on with fuel excise, which goes towards road maintenance, which is really the biggest argument for introducing road user charges now. So really the issue is just that it's too soon. In the future, when the market share of EVs rises, it's going to make sense, but right now it's just way too soon and it's going to discourage the EV market. So what are we doing? So right now, as a small organisation new to EVs, we're really just focusing on trying to stop the road user charges from being introduced too soon. So what that looks like for us is going back to our grassroots and member-based organising. We engage our members and EV owners and supporters to do things like sign petitions. We had a large online rally a few months ago as well to sort of demonstrate and sort of inform people about the road user charges and the impact they're likely to have. we get people to email, call, meet their MPs and decision makers. In a couple of weeks, we're holding a press conference in Action where we invite EV drivers along to bring their cars outside Parliament House and talk to the media, talk to decision makers about how this is going to affect them. And we recently launched, or about to launch rather, a joint open letter from a number of organisations, industry and environmental groups in the age, basically calling out this pretty terrible decision to tax EVs when the rest of the world is incentivising them. So this is the kind of work that we do. At the moment, we are pretty focused on Victoria. Fortunately, states like WA, Tasmania and ACT have already ruled out the tax. At the moment, Queensland, they haven't quite ruled it out, but they've said they're leaving the door open. So right now, we're focusing our energies on Victoria, but we're going to be looking further ahead to New South Wales, South Australia and potentially Queensland as well. So we're also looking beyond the road user charges. We really want to start looking at, what are the kind of policy asks we need to be directing to state and federal governments to get better outcomes for EVs, get better policies. And this is really where you guys come in, because we are very new to this space. We don't have the experience. We're not, for the most part, EV drivers yet, sadly. So we don't have that kind of first-hand knowledge. We're really looking at it from a policy perspective. So these are sort of some of the things that we've kind of learned and researched seem to be good policies to get the EV market going, but really we'd love your feedback. So, what we've seen overseas is effective is the upfront subsidies and incentives. Also, I think just what we were talking about before, like governments and organisations, having targets for them to transition their fleets to 100% electric. And also just, do we need more investment in charging infrastructure and access? Another big thing that's talked about to encourage EVs is having stricter fuel emissions or fuel efficiency standards, which Australia is well behind on. And also, do we need to start promoting local EV and battery manufacturing as well? So these are sort of some of the things that we've looked into, but ultimately we really want to work with organisations like you and people like you to really get a feel for what's actually going to work and what you actually want. Next slide. So if you are keen to know more, that's our website, those are our socials. I'm happy to have a chat at the end, or I'm sure Jen, if she doesn't mind, will be happy to put you in touch. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, just let me know. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Are there any questions? Come on. Do you have local meetings?
Not too often, so they're a bit ad hoc. But if it's kind of one of those things where if there's a want for it, we're happy to support it.
All right, very good.
Oh, sorry, is it just one more?
The argument they put forward that this is in order to maintain the loads. Have you got any analysis behind that and whether that's real? Does all the fuel excise go towards road maintenance?
No, it absolutely doesn't. So fuel excise goes into consolidated federal revenue, which there's no direct relationship between that and road maintenance spending. It just goes into general tax. And this is a state-based tax as well. So it's creating basically an entirely new revenue stream for states. So it's really just a bit of a cheeky way for them to get a slice of the pie. So yeah, the argument that EVs are costing road maintenance is bunk.
Unlike big trucks.
Yes, so that's a more controversial one because we don't want to start like an EV versus trucking industry war, but yeah, things like large trucking industries are paying just as much in fuel excise as regular cars, and they're doing a lot more damage to the road. So there's a lot of questions around what's fair and why EVs are being targeted.
The trucks definitely destroy the road. There's a road near where I live, and they resurfaced the road because there's a lot of big trucks, cement trucks, I think, that go through it. And within 6 months, it was full of bumps and potholes. So definitely the trucks destroy the road, sure.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I didn't really mention is, this isn't taking into account all of the, pro-environmental and pro-social benefits of EVs as well. So there's no recognition that the more EVs we have on the road, the better it is for the environment. And, other social factors as well, like air pollution. Instead, they're just going straight down the road of taxing and penalising, which is just really ridiculous when, as you know, the EV industry is just taking off. Yeah.
What do you do, membership?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love that. That would be great. The more we can work together, I think we have pretty common aims. That would be amazing. Yeah. Okay, well, I won't take up any more of your time, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Graham, I was actually thinking exactly the same thing. So, Hannah, thank you for that. Perhaps you really should bring some of your friends along to this, because we are parallel exactly with your goals there, and we do discuss this very similar issue. I've been forwarded emails from federal members quoting how much is spent on roads, and the percentage is like under 5%. And what tends to happen is the consolidated revenue goes to the government, and then they hand it, or the federal government, and then they hand it back to the states. But in Queensland, we also have fuel excise of our own that goes to the state government. So we probably pay about 8 to 9 cents more. Well, we don't, or some of us don't. But exactly what you said there, I 100% agree with just about everything you said there, I did, and I'll be checking that website out. So I think, once again, another round of applause for Hannah. That was very good. Thank you very much. Next up. Yes. 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 Yeah, well, yeah, it's... The AEVA national body has also put forward a document to address the loss of fuel excise, and therefore an EV tax requirement. And essentially that document has said, and I haven't heard anyone within EV circles contradict this, and that's pretty much everyone's happy to pay a road user tax, as long as it's put against everyone equally, and not just like targeting EVs. And it will be a real shame if Australia or whatever state brings in any sort of EV tax, because to my knowledge that'll be the first EV tax in the world, which is just counterintuitive really. So
the risk of being too far off the subject, the exact same thing happens with road transport and rail transport. So rail transport actually has a two-part charge. They get charged per tonne to run on the rail lines, and also per kilometre, whereas trucks only pay the fuel excise and registration. So that's why in Australia, unfortunately, rail transport is quite often not competitive with road, because road gets so many subsidies and backdoor sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of purposes in Australia. They have been working on those
Yeah, well, there's probably a very strong lobby against it, isn't there? So it's not sometimes in their interest if it's going to cost them votes or political donations and that type of thing. But all right, well, we might move on to our next speaker. I've got Mark or Cal. Who wants it? You want to come, Mark? We'll go next, and then Cal, and then Pete. Okay.
That's the deal with this again?
Just talk straight into it, mate.
No worries.
If it pops off, I'll just turn it back on.
Out here. Good evening, everyone. So thanks a lot for putting me on such a packed agenda for the night. I'll start with the obvious. I'm not Nathan. For those of you who have been along to the meetings, Nathan's been presenting I guess a series over the last 6 months or so, and we decided we'd share the presentation, so I'm doing this one tonight. And I'm going to talk about electric buses. So I can see some people's eyes rolling already. Buses aren't typically something that people get really excited about, even people who are interested in EVs. But I think it's something that as EV supporters and as EV proponents and EV owners, we should get excited about, because buses have the potential to be a catalyst for EV transition and a quicker uptake of EVs across all the other automotive sectors. They're a highly visible part of the road network, so seeing electric buses on the road can prompt people to think about that. And we've seen with the early rollouts that that buses are plastered with graphics and logos promoting the fact that they are electric, as they have been with all alternative fuels. But I think they can demonstrate this early transition in three ways. One, it can happen really rapidly. Secondly, it can be economically viable, as it is for a lot of bus fleets. And thirdly, it can be done using local content, local suppliers, local technology, which is certainly being done in the bus industry. And they're some of the aspects that I want to focus on tonight. So probably got about 15 minutes worth, about 6-7 slides, if that's all right. Yep. So let's start with the market. Globally, this if you can see that graph there, it shows the percentage of new vehicle sales across different vehicle types. So the red line is buses, the yellow line is two-wheelers, so motorbikes, and then you've got light commercial vehicles in purple and, light commercial vehicles in purple, yeah, and trucks in blue. And so what it shows is that buses, even today, so the very first data point in 2020, buses are the sector, the vehicle sector with the highest level of uptake of electrification. And that's just going to grow out to 2030, 2040, up to about 70%. So we're starting at about 20% globally last year. And that's, being a global figure, that's pretty impressive because it's not just one country like everybody likes to talk about. Norway, we're talking about a global level of uptake of about 1 in 5 buses already is electric.
Sorry, this is battery electric?
Battery electric. Yep. And about 500,000 of them are in China, but increasing uptake in Europe and the US as well. As is the case in many aspects of EVs, Australia's probably lagging a little bit on this front, but we are running fast and catching up. And part of the reason for that is that most, forgetting about federal government at the moment, most state governments have policies to support this, starting with a net zero target for emissions, and for which they see electric vehicles as one of the pathways to achieving that net zero target. And they unpack that into fleet-related targets for buses that they either operate or they fund other operators to run. So 3 examples here. New South Wales has publicly committed to transition all of the buses operating in Sydney to be electric, so that's 8,000 buses to be electric by 2030. And the ACT has done a similar thing for its fleet, but by 2040. And those 2 examples on the left I think are really important because we're not talking about new sales. A bus lasts for 20 years, 25 years in the fleet, a diesel bus. So we're not talking about just the vehicles that they buy. New South Wales would have bought buses last year, the year before, that were diesel buses that will only be 8 years old in 2030, and they'll be, certainly, I'm not suggesting they're going to early retire them, but they can move them out of that urban area in the Sydney GMR. And ACT will do the same thing. I guess locally, from a Queensland perspective, we're certainly catching up. There's a commitment from the Queensland government to make all new buses for urban services around Brisbane or southeast Queensland zero emissions by 2025. So that's an even earlier time frame, but it's new purchases only. So both good. Yeah, question?
But that doesn't include BCC though, does it?
So that's one of the examples, and BCC is going to Brisbane Metro on some of the routes, and they are electric. So 60 buses coming on board that'll be electric, and I can pretty much guarantee you that Brisbane Transport is looking at some electrification in their fleet as well. Yep. So I was going to mention some of those examples. So out in Redlands, you would have seen maybe some ABC media coverage on electric buses over the last couple of weeks. A bus out at Redlands, that one being powered entirely by renewable energy, and I'm talking about the electrons that are actually on the solar panels, on the warehouse, on the workshop, being stored in batteries and put through the charger into the bus. So all the electrons are actually making it in. Logan, so there's just go back one. There's a fleet in Logan as well that's got a couple of buses. There's been an announcement of a fleet on the Gold Coast. So this transition is happening. It's certainly going to happen in southeast Queensland. I mentioned the Brisbane Metro as well. In the next 5 years, I think the public transport fleet in Brisbane and around Australia is going to look very different, sound very different, feel very different, and smell very different as well. Not running diesel buses in all of those applications. So, very exciting time for buses.
Does zero emissions equate to electric though, or they're not doing dodgy offsets or something like that? When they say zero emissions, what does it mean in practice?
Yep, so different organisations define that differently. When we talk about emissions, you've got carbon. I was going to talk about this later, but may as well do it now. Carbon, which is essentially an environmental pollutant, carbon dioxide, and then you've got pollutants that have a health impact, and those are regulated. So some people talk about zero emissions from the pollution perspective, some people talk about zero emissions from carbon. Queensland Government on that commitment is talking about zero tailpipe emissions, and certainly the first rollouts that we've seen are all powered by renewable energy, so proper zero emissions. Yep. Thanks, Les. I said that they're all going to look quite different. That's probably not strictly true. The envelope, so what an electric bus looks like for the average punter on the street, is probably quite similar to what a bus today looks like, a diesel bus. I won't go into all the technical details, but some of the layout differences are batteries on the roof. So this compartment here, which normally has the engine and some of the transmission and axles and things, there's batteries in there as well as other elements like controllers, if you want to just click through a couple more, Les. I won't go into all of those details. We know some of the systems that electric vehicles have. You guys probably know them better than we do, and some of the manufacturers do. But the size of batteries that we're talking about are 325 to 450 kilowatt hours. So quite big batteries. And part of the reason for putting them on the roof is a low floor bus is very close to the ground when it kneels, so that kind of skateboard design is fairly impractical. And putting batteries up on the roof also increases access for charging via a pantograph, so an arm that comes down, like a tram basically, that can charge the batteries very quickly. So there's a couple of options there. Charging rates that we've seen vary from some of the operators that we've seen, are charging as low as 25 kilowatts overnight, all the way up to over 150 kilowatts and over, and I've seen proposals for 400 kilowatts via overhead pantograph. So,
what's the capacity though?
Capacity of what?
The battery size.
So anywhere from 325 up to 450, just up the top there. Obviously that charging rate is not just down to the charger, it's the slowest of what the charger can provide and what the vehicle can accept. And there will be buses there will be charging that is limited by what the bus can accept. I just want to pause on this for a second because if you think of a bus, we do have a local automotive industry. It just doesn't make cars anymore. We make components, we make bodies, we make drivetrains for buses as well, and for trucks. So we've got quite a healthy automotive industry in Australia. We just don't make cars anymore. One of the challenges with buses is that it's not like your car where you buy it from a dealer who gives you the product that what we call an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, made. So whether that's Tesla or Nissan or whatever it is. There's a chassis and a powertrain in a diesel bus. That might come from a manufacturer that has a different body put over it by a different supplier, a bodybuilder. In the case of some buses, the interior is fitted out by even another supplier as well. So you've got this kind of patchwork of different suppliers that are putting the vehicle together. If you overlay over the top of that a different battery supplier, so we've seen some that come in that have a different battery supplier to the chassis provider, and then charging as well, you've got these poor bus fleets, bus operators who are trying to integrate all of this stuff and adapt it for their application, which makes it quite complicated. So one of the key enablers going forward for buses is this integration of the systems and how they apply to the current fleet and integrating that so that it can be used to replace buses across more of the services that they provide. It is a challenge and some of the fleets are struggling with that. the key enabler, I guess, out of all that, we talked about charging. Thanks, Les. The key enabler of all that is energy. So an electric bus is energy limited, a diesel bus is not. What that means is that you can typically run a diesel bus if you wanted to for 2 days without filling it up, maybe in some applications 3 days, and you don't have to think about it. Typically they'll fuel them every day. You can't do that with an electric bus. What it means is that you don't always have a 1-to-1 ratio with, I'll just bring in an electric bus, put it in the fleet, and it'll just run on all the services that I can do. Sometimes there's some rescheduling required, retiming of charging events and how long the bus has to stay stationary for. And part of the reason for that is that buses use a lot of energy. Heavy vehicles use a lot of energy. The average sort of consumption you'd expect for a 12.5 metre bus in Australia is about 1 kilowatt hour per kilometre. So it's probably sort of 8 to 12 times what you'd see in your passenger cars. And that can vary by up to 30% depending on temperature, particularly cold weather increases consumption significantly. Thanks, Liz. So that's about the same as the daily consumption is for one bus, about the same as 14 average homes in Australia. So it's quite a bit. So that makes planning quite difficult. If you imagine that, one bus charging at 150 kilowatts is at a depot where at some point they'll have 10 there, they'll have 50 there, they'll have 100 there. You're very quickly up into megawatt rates of charge, so megawatt power requirements, which has a pretty significant impact on the local grid, potentially. So behind the meter, in front of the meter, the cable, the pipeline that comes in to carry all of that electricity, the peak charges for electricity that fleets or facilities are going to get charged. It can actually increase costs quite significantly once you start looking at a fleet rollout. It's just one of the barriers, I guess. Obviously, fleets and government think that that's worthwhile to achieve the benefits, and we've already had a chat today about some of the benefits of electric vehicles. I'm not going to cover all of those, but we're talking about things like emissions, and again, that's a combination of carbon and air pollution, which has a direct health impact on people. There's 3,000 people, I think the statistic is, dying every year in Australia from urban air pollution related problems, health problems. A cost of about $20 billion. That's not all buses, that's cars, trucks, it's power stations powered by coal. Pollution is probably the biggest impact. Carbon, other benefits are reduced running costs for the fleets, that's pretty appealing. Reduced noise, an electric bus is pretty quiet. Supporting local industries and also reducing our energy imports. We spend about $20 billion a year on imported diesel and fuel, and you can make that energy locally. So pretty important benefits. I mentioned carbon. Do you want to just go ahead, Les? I guess further to Hannah's point, unless you're powering those buses or any EVs with renewable energy, your carbon reduction, your emissions reduction is not actually that big. If you compare a diesel bus at about 35 litres of diesel per 100 k's with an electric bus powered by the Queensland grid, it's only about a 20% reduction. I don't know whether that's what you expect or not. If you power it with renewable energy, whether it's rooftop solar or purchased renewable energy, that's going to be about 100% saving. And that's why we've seen, as I mentioned before, all of these early rollouts, either the fleet or the government that's procuring the fleet is requiring renewable energy to be used to charge those vehicles. Okay, one more. So quick summary. It's going to be exciting times in the next 5 years, certainly in the next 10. We're going to see a lot more electric buses roll out. They bring a lot of benefits, and I guess the key enabler there is the government is prepared to pay for some of those benefits. They're currently externalities that no one pays for, whether that's carbon that nobody pays for or pollution and health costs that are not internalised. Government is paying for buses and is prepared to pay for that, so electric buses are more viable. But there's going to be some challenges along the way, and probably one of those biggest ones is, I mentioned supply and local supply. Pretty much every bus has some element of local content, and the 8,000 buses I talked about in Sydney before, that's about, if you average that out on a yearly basis, that's about half of all the buses that get sold in Australia every year will be required to be electric to just service that Sydney volume. And then if you start adding Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania, all the other states, ACT into that, that's a big challenge for the local industry to adapt to scale, to meet those production requirements and to get access to batteries even. So it's going to be really interesting seeing how they meet that challenge. That's it. Has anyone got any questions?
I do, mate.
Yeah?
So in your did you do a study into this? Could you, these are going to be completely unscripted questions, but do you know how far, say, a regular Brisbane City Council bus drives in a day? Considering that if it's using 100 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres, and they have a, say, 350 kilowatt hour battery, that's about 350 they're getting in range. So how far would they be travelling? Because what immediately comes to mind is that, well, why don't they just do 4 loops and then change buses, and then that can be on charge and then do that?
Yep. To answer your first question, we're working with the Queensland Government on some of these bus projects. We've been involved in validating some of the proposals for some other bus projects with the fleets. So that's where, I guess, part of the knowledge comes from. The answer to why can't it just be simple and how far do they drive, it varies. It depends. It's one of those questions, right?
Well, I don't really know how buses use.
Well, I was just about to say, so diesel buses can do anywhere between 50 kilometres a day, depending on what route they put on, all the way up to 450, right? So the diesel buses give fleets flexibility. It doesn't matter, I'll just take that one, I'll put it on that route. This one's broken down, I'll substitute another one in. You can't really do that unless you've got, with electric buses, unless you've got one with sufficient battery size. The way they combine different routes as well is important, because if you can't meet that distance requirement, then you need to charge during the day or en route, and there has to be a charger either at the depot, so the bus has got to come back, or it's got to charge en route. There is no basic simple combination that you could just put a bus on, and if you did, it'd actually reduce that interoperability. So you'd then allocate one bus for one operation, and you couldn't switch it in. It's not a one-to-one replacement for your diesel buses, which increases cost. Yeah.
So a bus driver in the morning's turning up and taking any bus that's...
Oh, they'll schedule it in, obviously, but it doesn't...
Do they get their bus or their route?
Sometimes, I guess. I mean, we haven't worked with all fleets, and I think some fleets do that. Other fleets, the driver just rotates between buses, depending on what their shift is. Yep.
It sounds like it is going to be planning the challenge.
It's planning, yep.
We charged a couple of months ago a really good YouTube video on a city in China that plans their electric taxi fleet.
Yeah.
Thousands of taxis, and they've got them up on like
Yep.
dashboard thing, and it's all live track.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing that I think you need to make this work.
There was a zero emission bus conference on late last year, I think it was, and that was one of the things that came out of that conference was some fleets are going to wait until an electric bus basically performs to the same level as a diesel bus, and there's this kind of decision you've got to take. Do I wait for that, or do you take the opportunity to redesign, retime, reschedule the way you operate your fleet around the network to accommodate the electric buses? And I think the quicker pathway to integrating them is actually obviously doing that, but then there's cultural change, there's behaviour shift, changing systems, and that's the way we've done it for 27 years, right? So that becomes challenging, yeah.
Isn't a bus more suitable for hydrogen?
Isn't a bus more suitable for hydrogen? Define more suitable. So you can use hydrogen on a bus?
Quicker in and out, grid connection for electric.
Why it's not, the cost is ridiculous.
Cost is really high for hydrogen today, and it will be out.
The argument would be more around hydrogen for quick in and out, grid connection, trying to charge that with batteries at the end of the evening, all those things.
So operationally, yeah, but if you consider operationally would work better, but you still need access to the hydrogen, and if you consider the cost, a diesel bus might be twice as expensive, an electric bus might be twice as expensive as a diesel bus. A hydrogen bus is 3 times as expensive. And the hydrogen fuel is about 4 times as expensive as electricity.
Yeah.
There's also
So we've done the modelling. Even to 2030, it's going to be more than diesel.
I can't necessarily see it all being electric, but
Okay, I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. I work there that if you had a prime mover, right, like a big truck that runs for 16 years a day, the cost of the electricity to run on hydrogen would be about $150,000 a year more than the cost of electricity if you run it on batteries. That doesn't include the cost of making the cost of the plant that makes the hydrogen, transporting the hydrogen, the infrastructure, fuel cell maintenance, all that. Just cost on electricity, if you pay 8 cents per kilowatt hour, it would be $150,000 extra just on electricity.
no one's going to pay cents per kilowatt hour.
So you have too much or too little? Or too late? Way too little. So that means if
So
you pay more.
it's 40, 16
Okay,
cents.
so if you
Anyway,
pay more,
let's
it
talk
will be
later.
John, can I make a suggestion? Can we have a night, a hydrogen night? Because we could have this debate for about 10 hours. I think it's really interesting.
No, I had a really good discussion.
is that like Fight Club or?
Yeah, it's a Fight Club. That's right.
Just to illustrate it a little bit, I had a really good discussion yesterday with Volvo, because they're doing the Volvo Energy
Yeah.
down this path, with regards to swappable batteries and how they're actually going to put trucks in the future. And that discussion was there as to really
Yeah.
where is hydrogen going to play.
Yeah.
So you're happy to talk further.
I think there's a lot of people who have opinion about hydrogen. The Fully Charged did do a video very recently. It was very easy, like very clearly explained that solar into an EV is about 75% efficient, and even if you go on most modelling, and then hydrogen's like 24, 20 something like that. That even if you say 30%, and then like ICE cars are way down at like 17%. So you just have this massive gaping hole between the efficiency as well. So first of all, you can, like, we all know, like we're talking to the converted here, but like it's so, the grid exists everywhere. There's electricity, that's where you can charge. So you can't charge your hydrogen car, fuel your hydrogen car anywhere, because there aren't any stations. So where that infrastructure needs to be built, it's miles away, and the federal government, I'm sure I heard today that they really want to push the hydrogen thing, and it could be a thing, but when people are seeing $4 a litre at the Bowser or something, I don't know like what's going to happen, but electric cars are then another 10 years further down the track, and I just can't see it really happening. So
Sorry, I was going to say before that your average driving speed, if you drive around in the city, is about 36 kilometers per hour. So that basically means that if your shift was 10 hours, then your bus would probably go about 360 km.
Yeah.
The bus would probably be a bit slower because cars don't normally stop at bus stops.
well, there's a lot of stopping and starting on it.
Regen.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Makes a
stopping.
big-
Going those slower speeds also is quite good for the.
How much distance a bus drives
Yeah.
in a day? You know, it would probably, if you had a 10-hour shift, then you're looking at 360 kilometers or less.
Yeah.
You couldn't do more unless you went on the highway.
But your stats were 1 kilowatt hour per kilometre.
I've seen as low as 0.7 and as high as 1.2. So it's about 1 on
Yeah,
average.
and that's just stop start
Yeah.
type driving.
But and I guess to the question that you asked about how far do they drive, I've seen 370, 380, 420 k's on some operations, but that doesn't mean they're all doing that. Some will do that, some will do 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it varies.
Okay. Well, we might leave it there. Any questions afterwards? And we'll just Who, like, if you want to spice up a bus talk, let's talk about hydrogen as well at the same time, eh? Like, that's going to get people interested. All right, Cal, I think you're up, buddy. We've got Cal, who's brought his bike collection along, and that's my blue one over there. Yeah, he doesn't know it yet. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Did you have a presentation? Mate?
I didn't, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I'll fill that over.
Yes, if you could, that'd be great. Evening, everyone. Thank you, John, for the invite to bring our little electric bikes along to show everybody. Probably the one thing that really stands out with the electric bikes is that not a lot of people know that bikes are available in electric form. People still are stuck in the old petrol mode and that sort of thing. So it's always amazing to see the shock on people's faces when they find out that the bike's electric. So, and we've had a recent experience where I was just telling some of the other people here that we were down at a local dog park and my sons were running around on the blue one here in the BMX park. And normally if you try and take one of those bikes in there, petrol-wise, you're going to get booted out there real quick. So you're going to have the police knocking at the door, telling you to bugger off, and you're getting fined and even getting your bike confiscated. We had no issues whatsoever with this bike in that park. We had people coming up to us, and we thought, oh, here we go. They wanted to know what it was. We ended up doing demos. People were going away loving it. So yeah, it's just really amazing to see what these bikes are available and what they can do for people in the day-to-day life sort of thing. Our journey as electric dirt bikes started back in 2007 where we imported a heap of kids' bikes in a 24 volt and a 36 volt configuration. So they just run on little lead acids. And unfortunately, it took us 3 years to sell that container load. So we had all sorts of issues trying to break that mould of getting people away from buying little PV50s for their kids and accepting the bikes in an electric form. So, but we stuck to it. So 15 years later, we're still here, and we're, as you can see, the market's changed completely. We've now got lithium batteries. We've got a fantastic performance. And the one thing that over that period of time, the dads and the mums had nothing to ride. They either had to go to an e-mountain bike with the pedelecs type ones. So the kids always had the fun. So it was interesting to see the market change to having Segway and sur-ron releasing these bikes, and now we're finding that the dads are buying the bikes and then the mums are coming back and buying the kids' bikes. Whereas beforehand it was, mum generally either getting the bikes for the kids, and then the mum and dad had to sort of basically ride along on either a normal push bike or run along next to them and try and catch them if they had an issue. So yeah, it's the market's definitely changing. We're seeing all sorts of products coming out of Europe as well as the Chinese markets. These ones are Chinese, these ones are a Czech-made product, so both fantastic, very, very solidly built. This one, unfortunately, is still lead acid, but their latest ones are now lithium, so they've finally caught up with that one. So, yeah, it's just...
Just give us a rundown on how... because the stats are pretty good on them.
Yeah.
How far can they go? And
so this one, so the sur-rons and the Segway, they're both the same companies. Segway own a fair chunk of sur-ron. So it's just common sense to have the same bike branded and marketed with both names on it. So this one is running a 6,000 watt motor, 60 volt, 32 ampere hour battery, which is all that system in here. So it can come out, it can be charged on the bike or off the bike. Very simple to interchange if you want an all-day ride. You'll get 60 to 90 k's of range out of that battery, depending on how you ride it, your weight and that sort of thing. So, and top speed, my son's done 85 k's an hour on this one. So, so they get along quite, and they do fly, so it's quite interesting. It catches a lot of people.
That's private use only, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. It's well, no. Well, yeah.
So you can ride it like a mountain bike situation, or? Yeah,
these ones you can generally. They're purely off-road, so you can't ride this one on the road legally. Okay. Now we've had one client who unfortunately lost his bike, but he'd been told 3 times by the police, do not be on the road. So he learned his lesson. So yeah, purely off-road, and the beauty is that you can just urban ride, so you can get into the local bushes and that sort of stuff. No one even knows you're there, and as I said, you're not going to. No one knows you're there, so no one's going to complain. So.
What about on bikeways? Push bikeways, you're allowed to use them on there?
You would be able to, yeah, as long as you kept the speed down. Typically, you should only be doing 50 k's an hour on those ones. So you can ride, as long as you kept that down, you won't do anything stupid, you should be okay. So as long as you've obviously got a helmet and everything on as well. So, yeah.
Can you limit it?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. This one has got 2 switches on, so you've got eco and sport. So you can either, if you've got a beginner or someone whose confidence not that high on it, you can switch it down to a lower speed and a lower power output, so either 3,000 watts or 6,000 watts. So the beauty with the Segway one is also it's actually Bluetooth, so you can actually hook it up to the Segway app. So you can do all your configurations on that as well. Regen, you can do your throttle response, your speed. You can even map all your rides and even geo-fence it so that if someone can't go too far away with it. So, yeah. So the only thing you can't do is stop it if someone's heading for trouble. So, but on these ones you can. With the Bluetooth and the Kuberg Volt app, you can stop the bike. So if the kid looks like he's heading for trouble, hit the button. So, and it just stops it. So, to the point where even we have 18-month-old kids riding the little balance bikes as well. This is a new range that's come out, so probably a 2-year-old market now where the balance bikes are now powered. So either an 80 watt or a 180 watt motor in it. So either a hub motor or a brushless chain motor. So, so even you can get the kids up and riding, get them off those tablets, get them outside, and enjoying the outside. So, and the best part is they're so light. Mum can pick them up, put them back in the car. You don't have to worry about oil, petrol leaking. So they can be taken down the parks really easy.
Can I ask how much?
On which one? These ones? Yep. Sorry. This 5,999. These ones would sell for about 2,800. The little blue one, the 12-inch one over there is 995, and the red one is 1,095. So very affordable. So all spare parts available, warranty available. Yeah.
When you say geofence, does that on that large blue one?
Yeah. So you can basically.
Geofence, like you let somebody comes and pinches or something. Does that mean they get to the end of the fence and it stops the bike?
Yeah, well, it's basically set in a 50 metre or 100 metre range. So if the bike gets out there, it'll just stop. So, yeah. They've got to push back. So, yeah, it's more for the beginners and that sort of thing. So if you don't want someone racing across the paddock at full pace and getting themselves into trouble. So,
What's the weight to carry it on the back of the car?
these ones are 55 kilos. If you take the battery out, which is 20 kilos, so you're down to 35. So very easily, most of the petrol-powered tow racks will handle 150, 180 kilos easily. So these things is nothing. So could even just lay them down. I've got some clients over in WA that they've got those little smart cars. They put the bike in, front wheels hanging out the back. So yeah. So yeah.
Pick the little one up and fit it back in his SUV.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, these ones, especially with the lithiums in them, they're quite light, so they're about 30 kilos, those ones.
So power-wise, that compares to like the old two-stroke 125?
Yeah, 125, yeah, or 150, yeah, exactly, yep. So it's an amazing market with these ones. We actually saw in that slide, the whole two-wheel market is changing very quickly, and the demand is growing, especially last year. Unfortunately, all the manufacturers had trouble with componentry manufacturers, so we couldn't get any stock. We would have sold an absolute stack of these things if we had bikes and componentry available. So.
Just a single speed gearbox?
Yes, single, yeah. Although there is stuff coming out of China. With this one here, they've got a model called the Storm B, which is a gearbox, and there's another company there called Vela Motors. They're bringing out a 4-speed one as well. So.
What are they like with water and mud protection?
Very good, yeah, IP66 on most of them, so yeah. Yeah, there's videos of this one going for a swim completely, factory testing it, into a lake and out, no dramas. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Who's having a test ride after the...
Yeah, 1, 2, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, excellent.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Thanks, John.
Like I said, this one's mine. I don't mind the blue either. Thanks for bringing that. Why I like these is because motorbikes are noisy, and this kind of fits the bill for not annoying the neighbours. Like, people just won't even know that this is a motorbike when you're riding it around the local park, really. I mean, and yeah, just quiet and very good. All right, Pete. Yeah. So what we might do here is turn on the outside light and go and have a look at the unveiling of Peter's. So Peter's here with his van. Do you want to just do a discussion here and then we'll go out, or how would you like to do it?
All I've turned up for tonight, thank you, is basically to thank the AEVA for their support in getting everything done. With special thanks to Graham and Simone, who have actually been helping me with via Susie Auto over at Springwood. We've been doing ADR brake tests and changing brake lines backwards, forwards for the homologation engineers. I can say homologation now without getting my tongue tied. They're the people that check the checks. But this has been 18 months in the making. We've had lots of false starts with COVID and the like, but pleased to say that we're actually going to be bringing to the Australian market a first, which is a right-hand drive for the Australian market. The manufacturer is Skywell, which is an electric bus manufacturer from China. They were one of the few that actually put up their hand and said, yes, we're prepared to help you with R&D and a right-hand drive because our market just isn't big enough. So we've finally got that to come out. Quick stats, basically range between 200 to 300 kilometres depending on how much weight you've got in it. It will carry 1.7 tonne and has a capacity of around 12.3 cubic metres. So it's no slouch. 73 kilowatt hour battery. That one's the prototype, so don't go looking at the charging port and sort of say, what's this? The full production model, which goes into production May, June, will be CCS Type 2. It'll have an onboard charger of 22 kilowatts. You can granny charge it from 7 amp all the way up to 70 kilowatts DC. So no more.
Number of pallets?
3. You can squeeze 3. It depends on the size of your pallet, because you've got Euro pallets, you've got Australian pallets. I found out all about pallets. It's quite interesting. But internal height, 1950, so you can be 6'4" and stand up in the back. I've had a lot of inquiry from people wanting to do camper van conversions because of the range. I've had fun over the last few days at Willowbank Raceway doing range, speed and endurance testing. So I can tell you that it has done fully laden with 1.7 tonne, 2 drivers and the air conditioning going full blast at an average speed of around 100 kilometres an hour non-stop, so not the ideal scenario for an EV. We achieved from 100% down to 10%, because I wasn't going to completely run it dry, about 170 kilometres. So that's 4.5 tonnes of vehicle being moved at that average speed. So there's no regen in that, except for maybe coming into four corners and with an average speed of 100 k's an hour. Just the way it's never going to be driven, but we needed to know, because people want to know. Producers, we've mapped the drive, which is rather interesting if you want to get into drive mapping. I don't want a 4.5 tonne vehicle doing wheel spins at the traffic lights. No one needs that. So she starts off with about 60 kilowatts of power. That develops into 100, nice and easy. But it starts at 350 newton metres of torque for its purpose of its main use, which of course is for cargo, and that develops straight up into 750 newton metres of torque. So taking off with 1.7 tonne from the traffic lights is exactly the same as taking off with absolutely nothing in the back. There might be a small difference, but it's basically indiscernible. And that's the whole idea for what we've designed here. We want a vehicle in the logistics industry. There's just nothing around. Logistics basically uses the most fuel. It's all of that last mile consumption that everyone's looking at. Since COVID, we've seen a major increase in online shopping. And of course, all the online shopping has to be delivered. So courier drivers having a good time. Cal, talking about the, well, there you are. I knew you were around there somewhere. He's a courier, okay, in his other life. The most that he does in a day is 150 kilometres. Now, even if I said the range was 200, that's still a nice buffer. But it means that the drivers can start work with 100%, do a full day's work, go home, plug it in, have a beer, go to sleep, wake up next morning, and they don't have to go to a petrol station. It's fully charged. So this is a sneak peek. It gets released officially next month at the Brisbane International Truck Show. So it's not released anywhere else. How many are in Australia? That's it, so don't break it. I'm doing a 12-seat bus that will be on a boat with 800 Teslas, hopefully tomorrow. Tesla's actually organised a special ship to go from Shanghai direct to Brisbane. We were able to secure a spot on that with our bus. So whether or not Tesla knows about it, I don't know, but the shipping company said, we've got space for a bus. So we've stuck that on there. So thank you, Mr. Musk, for putting that in there. But again, it comes direct, so we're pretty safe. Questions?
Have you got many buyers yet?
Yes, I've had a number of, it's actually quite diverse. The first sale that we've actually got, I've got a man who just wants to keep giving me his money, but I'm sort of saying I don't need it yet. I can't physically put you under contract legally. I don't want to take your money yet, but as soon as it's ready, but he wants to write me a cheque and give it to me, is wanting to convert it into a camper. So, yeah, Matt will be having the very first one that comes off the boat. I've already promised him that. But freight companies, logistics, I'll be talking to pubs and clubs that operate the courtesy buses, the aged care facilities, disability transport. We're developing a wheelchair compatible vehicle as a factory option. So not come over here, convert it into, put a wheelchair lifter in and reconvert it, basically order it straight from factory with that. So we're working with disability providers to work that out.
So smaller body styles, per plane?
One. That's it. I kept it simple. Only one style, one model, no options, although it's that one out there's got 2 seats. The final production model will have 3, but if you want 2, I can do it. Just talk to me and say, hey, I'd like a 2-seat model.
12-seater bus is the same shape, everything, except it's got seats in it.
It's got seats, it's got trim, it's got ducted air conditioning, it's got windows. I think it's got extra speakers for a sound system so they can crank up.
And that's the only difference between that and the 12-seater bus?
Basically, yep. That's it. It makes logistics a whole lot easier as far as build goes. One goes to the trim shop that way and the other one turns left.
What sort of premium would you be looking at, particularly for the bus, over an equivalent?
The bus will actually come in a lot cheaper than an equivalent diesel in the same size, because a lot of the buses, for example, if you're looking at a coaster bus, yes, it's 14 seats and the like. I'm only designing mine as a 12, which means that everyone in this room can drive a 12-seat bus. You don't need a special driver's licence, which comes into the people that are doing aged care or courtesy buses. The driver doesn't turn up, so Fred behind the bar can jump in and do the run.
Is that 12, is that 11 plus 1? Or?
Yes. So 12 seats, including the driver, is the maximum capacity here in Australia. I can make extra seats. I can put them all in there. So I've had a bit of interest from a few bus companies that want to do on-demand services, and they want 16. So I'm doing a seat map for them that want to do that. So it's basically extra in the far row, up the front, and another one in the middle somewhere.
As a van, compared to the
Okay.
it's cheaper than the diesel.
No. That was in the bus configuration. A Mercedes-Benz long wheelbase, same height, Sprinter, is over the 100 grand. Well, we saw one the other day and we asked the question, how much is this? And they said, oh, it's about 120, and we went, oh, okay. So ours will be under 100. So that was pretty good. As far as a diesel van, we're still crunching numbers because we've got import tariffs and government bits and pieces that we're all putting in there. We anticipate it will be early to mid-90s, including GST, for that van. So putting that into comparison with the same size vehicle in a diesel, you've got to look at capacities and cargo capacity as well, because you can have a cheap diesel, but it only carries a tonne. This carries almost 2. You might have one that has 8 cubic metres, this is 12. So looking at those comparisons, there is a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, which is what I based my research on. It's a little bit smaller than that, just a fraction in capacities, but it's around $78,000. So premium to move up to full electric is about that $12,000 to $15,000 mark, which is not your traditional double the price.
I know you've only just started. What's your expected hypothetical lifespan for the vehicle? So, because you expect a comparable Mercedes Sprinter van to get 2 years, 3 years, and then it's done 3 years.
Yeah, it'll go a whole lot. It'll go a whole lot better than that.
Yeah.
Your maintenance is, of course, EV maintenance. Mainly inspections once a year. You don't have your hoses, belts, filters, fluids, oils. So your maintenance cost, I think, on an LDV diesel for its 60,000 kilometre service, as an example, was $780. Okay, we're anticipating this to be somewhere between 150 to 200. We're still talking to service providers, but just to get a bit of an idea, so full service, $150. Thank you very much.
For a year.
Yep.
And will you carry spare parts and that sort of stuff?
Oh yes, we're not going in blind. We've got spare parts organised. We've got full lists of what do you think we need. We'll also have a couple of donor vehicles if we need something urgently. If someone's decided to back into a back door and we need to transport something over. If it's not here yet, yes, we'll get you one. It's fun. I mean, I used to be 25 years old when this started, and I was had a lot more hair. So it's been a learning curve, but for all of the heartache and stress, it's the fun parts that make it all worthwhile.
What are your lead times? What are you expecting?
Full production that one's the prototype, so there's little things that are going to change between that and the full production. I've got a new sound system going in, have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. That one's just some Chinese thing that they threw in there. I've got a new dashboard because I didn't like that dashboard. I wanted something a little bit with a bit more information. We were talking about that earlier. What was the data? That one won't give me any. The new one will. I need an extra bit of trim on the back. I think there's a handle on the door that I want to put on. But they'll go into production in June. So full production commences in June, and I'll start delivering in August. The best part...
From the point where you order one to when it arrives.
So that's when I'm going to order stock. What then happens is I can then order, and this is the beauty of dealing with this company, if I only need to order one van, I can order one and they'll make it. If I need to order 100, they'll make it. Same month. So their capacity is 1,000 units a month, but I'm not under any obligation for any minimum volume that some of the mainstream manufacturers look at, which is they will not order a vehicle until they fill a bulk order of 500. So that's Hyundai's example is that's how they're working. Until they sell 500, they don't place an order. If you're unfortunate and you order vehicle 501, you've got to wait till the next batch. But that's just their logistics. So.
All right, we might.
Sorry.
Do we want to?
What's the drivetrain? Is it one motor or two motors?
No, it's a single motor. Single motor. It does have a drive shaft. We're doing some R&D at the moment, removing drive shaft, putting a direct motor at the back. That gives us a bit more space, and hopefully at the next generation after that will be 100 kilowatt battery.
Larger battery packs available?
Larger, not yet, only because of the drive shaft. So, but 76 is about the biggest that we got at the moment. We could have, that's water cooled or liquid cooled. We could have gone to an air cooled battery at 80 kilowatts, but I prefer for our climate just to stay with the liquid cooled or water cooled system.
All right.
So if anyone wants to go have a play and have a look, more than welcome. But yeah, it is a first, and so tell your friends, tell your neighbours, tell the companies.
Thanks.
Thanks, mate.
We might give all of our speakers a round of applause. Thank you, Hannah, Cal, Pete, Mark, and Tim. All right. Well, that's about it. We normally break now and have a big sort of chat about things. Pete was taking people for a drive earlier, but if you want to go, you might have to rock, paper, scissors for the front seat, otherwise you're in the back. So, all right, who's getting the first ride on the motorbike? Bugger off, that's me. All right. Oh, yes. Did anyone else? There was one other thing. Don't be so quick to leave, jeez. Francisco and his Pajero. Okay, well, come up and tell us where you're up to with that, mate.
I got a bit of time this month, so I managed to sort out the problems that I had with the inverter, so I got them all working. So if you play the video, you can see I got 3 videos. So that one's just driving off. There's another one with the regen braking. The car doesn't have any mechanical brakes, by the way, because you know it's out of I bought it as a rolling chassis. So all this is regen braking. Sorry? Yeah, you can see there's no master cylinder because the wreckers took it off. Because I think they actually get good money for it. And the next one is actually a test of how well you can drive with the regen braking. So just got to wait a little bit until, because I was messing around with it.
That's basically a Tesla right there.
As you can see, there's no pedal, no mechanical brakes. So it brakes almost as accurately as you can with a brake pedal. You can see, you know, it looks like you're using the real brakes. I was actually trying to brake really close to those fridges to show that it is actually very controllable in terms of the braking. So yeah, I'd like to see anybody try that without touching the brakes.
So that's just with the accelerator pedal, right?
That's just accelerator pedal. Like the brake doesn't actually have anything connected to anything, so you can't use it. So yeah, there you go. Sorry? No. Yeah, so I've set up the pedal to work a little bit different than you do on a normal EV. Yeah, that was just driving over the gutters a little bit.
And that's with both motors running?
Yeah, so it's got 2 motors now, but the front one is only running at about 60% of the peak torque because I'm using cheap transistors for now because I'm still testing and I don't want to blow up the expensive ones. So yeah.
Excellent. Francisco's actually asked if he can come out and drive that on my property when he's got time to do some testing and put some Ks on an actual sort of four-wheel drive environment. So I'm going to sign a waiver. It's got a smashed windscreen. It'll be okay.
Actually, the real one has actually got a cracked windscreen, so I'm going to see if I can get him to put the cracked windscreen on this one and put a new one on the real.
I might, we might have a day up at my property one time when Francisco's testing that out, because I reckon that'd be pretty funny. All right, well, anyone else have anything to say? I did forget to offer it out to anyone else. Yes. Yes, Simone? Was there any new members here tonight? No? A lot of familiar faces. Oh, yes.
So, T-shirts. Oh, sorry. T-shirts.
T-shirts.
Anyone wants to order one? I've just put another order in for someone. Oh, I'm sorry. Shall I talk into them?
Yep.
So I've just put another order in for someone from the weekend. If you want a T-shirt, please let me know. I'll give you bank details, or you can give me cash. If you are a member, they're $30, and if you're a non-member, they're $40. If you're not a member, you should be, so please do sign up quickly. There's also hats still. We've had them for a little while, so there's still some available. And the other thing was, oh yes, so May 1st, I'm still looking for one other person to come and display their car. Probably not Tesla, because we've already got a Tesla coming up, so if there's another car, that would be great. Sorry? A home build would be awesome, but look, you know, we just need to, well, come and talk to you. Anyway. Yes, hijacking. That's terrible. So the other thing I wanted to just ask you guys was, Jan and I were quite eager to do some sort of drive day towards the end of the year. I know we've talked about it for a little while, but I really need some helpers if we're going to run it. If we don't get many helpers, then we're probably going to put something small on. So please come and see me, ring me, email me, whatever you feel comfortable with, but we do need to get something happening because we need to know what direction we're going. It's fine not to do something or to only do something small, but we will still need helpers. So Jan and I can't do it on our own. We're pretty good, but we can only be in 2 places. So please help. And that's it.
We're going to do a drive day in Drive Electric Week, and at this stage we'd like to probably invite people that own EVs to bring theirs along, maybe take people for test drives. That's roughly where we're starting, and we can, if we nut that out, then we'll probably build up on top of that, and then we'll have some committee meetings. I was thinking about actually having one tomorrow night. I don't know if you're tied up? Okay. All right, well, yeah, that's about it anyway. Thank you all for coming. Can you please just tick your name if you turned up tonight, and put the money in the tin if you need to, and let's break and have a social chat. Thanks for coming.
If it's your first time visiting, you don't need to pay anything.
Okay. Thank you, guys.